Hey everyone, welcome! Before anything else, I'd like to let you know that I'm Godric, and I've been playing the game since its launch. I might have said that a lot of times already in my past videos, but yeah, I'm saying it in the hopes that you'd believe me in the things that I say here and give me a chance. So please subscribe to the channel, it's free and it would really help me out to grow it, So with that, we're going to look at my favorite character, I guess. My first main from, when he started the game. And right now, we're going to talk about the hidden Pyro Archon, secretly a 5-star character, our best boy, Bennett. Bennett is one of the first 4-star characters released since the start of the game. Hailing from Mondstadt, Bennett bears the Pyro Vision, and he uses a sword. Since during those times, I didn't really look at any guides, nor did I join the community forums or groups or whatever. I just used him because I liked his character. And even then, he never really received as much love because of his misunderstood kit. But yeah, he was my main DPS, my healer, my go-to character in any quest, But don't worry because there's going to be no bias here, just honest review and guide on how to best utilize him and his kit. So what makes Bennett so good, so useful, so strong, and so well-rounded is, like I said, his kit. He can easily apply Pyro through his skill. It even has a fast cooldown. And his burst is his very special feature as it provides characters on it healing and or attack buff. And we'll get more on that later. Let's look at his talents first. You already know what the normal attack talent does. So his normals deal up to 5 rapid strikes. His charge attack tosses small mobs, and then plunge attack, and then his skill, Passion Overload, has 3 levels. So depending on if you simply press, or short hold, or long hold. Now when you press, it deals a single pyro strike, short hold deals 2, and then long hold deals 3, and then tosses Bennett away. Now his burst, Fantastic Voyage, is his very special talent. There are improvements to it as Bennett's Constellation progresses, but of course, we're going to talk about C0 first. So upon activating his burst, Bennett slams the ground and deals damage to that AoE. And then you'll notice the AoE in the form of a fiery circle. So this circle procs 2 effects. If a character on it has an HP equal to or below 70%, that character is healed and the healing scales off of Bennett's max HP. And it's only up to 70% of that character's HP. But if, for example, your Bennett's heal is so huge that even if your character's HP is, say, at the extreme case of 69%, he would still heal even if it goes past the 70% cap. Then the next effect is if the character on it has 70% HP above, so they gain an attack buff instead, and the attack buff scales off of Bennett's base attack. If you're wondering about base attack, you can visit my general guide to building characters if you need a refresher about it. So Bennett's passive talents, first is the Rekindle, so it reduces his skill cooldown by 20%. Next is Fear Not. When Bennett is inside his burst, it further reduces his skill's cooldown by another 50%. Finally, his other passive talent is simply a reduction of exploration time in Mondstadt. Now that we've discussed his talents, you probably see him as simply a healer or a support, which he is, and a very good one at that. But now, here's a hot take. I'd advise you to build your Bennett not solely as a healer or support, but as a burst support. Hear me out. First, this is my opinion and my take, not as something I'm telling you to do. Because as much as I'm doing this on my own, it's also your choice to build him however you want. I'm not insisting it, but I've been attacked many times about it. So Bennett deals decent damage via his skill and more so via his burst. At the same time, he heals enough even without focusing on building his HP. So let's go back here later as we talk about his weapons and his artifacts. First, let's take a look at his weapons. So either pure utility and healing support or a burst support, I would not recommend a 3-star weapon because his attack will be affected. And of course, so will your main DPS because of course his buff will be lowered. So on 4 stars. The first F2P option you have is the Prototype Rancor because it usually is ignored after you progress in the game, and most of the time, it's also maxed before you reach your endgame, so, while you're trying to juice all the damage you can get as you climb, the Rancor is one of your first weapons. And furthermore, the Rancor's base attack for Bennett is pretty useful in either roles that you choose for him, as it doesn't sacrifice his attack buff. For utility support weapons, Favonius Sword, drawback is you still need to build him with crit stats, to proc its effect. Sacrificial Sword, fairly decent. You can stack up more particles for fast burst uptime, but we know that the Sac Sword is more utilized on Xingqiu, so if you have an extra, you can, equip it to Bennett. But mind you, both of these swords, the Favonius and Sacrificial, have minimum base attack. You can use almost all the other swords, honestly, I just don't want to go through each of them. It's gonna bore you to death, but of course, you should be mindful of what you equip him, depending on what role you put him in. If, for example, you're only using him as an attack buffer, you can't equip him with your weapon that has a passive, that requires him to be on field, or those that could be utilized more by your other characters. For 5-star weapons, I am again not going to go over them one by one, as, I don't want to take too much time. So, either as a DPS or as support, the same concept of wanting the higher base attack for his buff matters. Albeit, for example, you have another sword user who actually needs the weapon's passive or substat. You of course prioritize them over Bennett, especially if Bennett is just your support. So my Bennett here is using the Jade Cutter despite it having a lower base attack because like I keep saying, my Bennett is not a pure healer or utility support. So Bennett's other best weapons are the Mistsplitter Reforged, so because it has this sick substat and very high base attack, as well as the passive, and the Aquila Favonia for the passive and the high base attack, as well as Skyward Blade for its energy recharge substat. And on artifacts, Bennett's best and all-around set would be the 4-piece Noblesse. I use it myself as an all-around set, and you can too, of course, for either burst DPS or utility/healer. Just be mindful that its 4-piece set effect doesn't stack, so it's best used on only one character. Next is the 4-piece Crimson Witch for a dedicated DPS Bennett, although it's a tough domain to farm, and aside from the RNG of it all, the Crimson Witch pieces are better off given to your other Pyro DPSs like Diluc, Hu Tao, or Yoimiya. I also once tried using Bennett with 4-piece set Emblem of Severed Fate. It's good for a burst DPS Bennett, having bonus ER and boosted burst damage, but you should keep in mind that unlike Raiden, Xiangling, and Xingqiu, who best utilizes this set, Bennett's burst is a one-time thing, and it's not as utilized like theirs. If you have no decent 4-piece sets yet, you can mix and match 2-piece sets of the Emblem for extra ER juice, 18% attack pieces, or even the Crimson Witch or Noblesse. Of course, factoring in the ones with better stats. For players who have not unlocked the 5-star artifacts yet, you can make use of the 4-piece Instructor set if you need the EM boost for your party, the Exile for ER boost, either 2-piece or 4-piece, or the 2-piece Scholar set. But yeah, honestly, I also keep saying this, you can use any 3 or 4-piece artifacts with better stats. It doesn't really matter early on in the game. So now let's talk about stat priority. Again, depending on what weapon you're using, you want to balance out your stats accordingly. So first, for Bennett supports, particularly for players early AR and are climbing with Bennett as their support, ER stands for ensuring burst uptime, HP percent goblet, and I can't believe I'm saying this, but either crit rate or HP or healing bonus circlet. Crit rate is important if you're running him with Favonius Sword, so yeah, you need to keep that in mind. And few things to note about this is, you want your ER to be around 200%, as of course overflowing ER could be overkill and it would just lose value. And then again, attack stats on artifacts don't matter if you're only using him as a support. Only base attack is counted for his attack buff. Now, for DPS support Bennett, this set utilizes his whole kit and what I would recommend, especially to endgame players. Again, depending on your weapon, because you can actually still use support-based weapon. So, you want attack sands or ER sands if you don't have any ER substats on your other pieces. And then Pyro damage goblet, of course, and crit rate or crit damage circlet. Substat priority, of course, crits, attack percent, ER if you're short on it, and finally, HP percent. I personally use this build, as you can see here, as even at minimal HP of 20k, the healing is just enough for me. And if you're struggling, yeah, you can build him as a full-blown healer. Now let's go real quick at his constellations. This one's a bit tricky, especially at C6, and it's one that's, always asked around the community. So first off, at C1, at C0, you may find Bennett's buff to be at an okay level, but C1 takes the cake. It further increases his attack buff by 20%, and it doesn't require the character to have an HP 70% and above. So regardless of the HP of the character on the field, the character will be buffed. And then C2 is a nice bonus for Bennett's ER, an increase to his ER if he's low on HP. Then of course, you know that C3 and C5 are an increase to his skill and burst respectively. So C4, something for DPS Bennett's, it's often overlooked. So when you're going for hold skill, at the second level of holding, you can do a normal attack and it will execute a third strike, as if you're doing a long hold of his skill, but it doesn't toss Bennett away. And then finally at C6, as you can see here, my Bennett has had this exclamation point for as long as I can remember. His C6 renders his burst to act like Chongyun's skill, it infuses the melee weapon of the character on field with Pyro. So this is something that some, if not most players, are still confused about. It's always debated if it's bad or not, but to be honest, in the recent patches, the new characters released, it no longer affects them. And to expound on this, without C6, Bennett's burst applies Pyro on the field and to the character on field. So the Pyro application is on the character. It may also work as a cleanse. So the cleanse, quote unquote, for example, this was an issue from past Abyss floors where if your character is affected by Hydro, your skill cooldowns are prolonged. So one thing you can do is cleanse or remove the applied element, which is Hydro, by applying a different one on yourself. And in that case, we used to cleanse with Pyro. So once you enter Bennett's burst, your character is affected by Pyro, and you can see this here at the bottom of your screen. So that's it. Now with C6, all those would still apply, but in addition to that, your melee weapon is also infused with Pyro. So it becomes similar to a catalyst or a charged bow attack, where the attack you do is Pyro. And it also boosts your Pyro damage by 15%, and this Pyro damage bonus applies to any character on the field, even Klee, Yamfei, Amber, or Yoimiya. So the Pyro damage bonus is, not infusion. And it's not bad if you think about it, but it takes away certain combos that you want to do. For example, you want to do a reaction with Pyro, which we know are a lot. But in this case, say we want to melt, or to be specific, reverse melt. So for example, you're using Ayaka. So you normally want to buff Ayaka, right, using Bennett's burst. So you use Bennett's burst and it applies Pyro to the enemy, and then since Ayaka's on Bennett's burst, she naturally is infused with Pyro too. So Ayaka's dash attack combo would be messed up because her cryo infusion would be overridden by Bennett's burst. This is the same case when you use Kaching, Eula, or Razor, where they of course want to do physical or electro, some cases for Kaching, but their weapons are Pyro infused and their scaling would, differ naturally. So overall, Bennett's C6 has its issues, especially with physical damage, and it sort of locks exclusively as a Pyro support, as how Sarah is for Electro, Goro is for Geo, and Shenhe for Cryo. But what's special about Bennett is that he doesn't just buff, he heals too. So if you're not a fan of physical damage or you're not using them anyway, you can activate it. And ultimately, it's your choice however you want to play the game. Now regarding team comps, one great thing about Bennett based on what we've just talked about is how flexible he is. His element, Pyro, can contribute to different elemental reactions. His kit can make him viable either as a pure DPS or a pure support, or a combination of both. He's also one of the best holders of the 4-piece Noblesse Oblige set, and with that, yeah, he can fit in almost any team comp either as a support, a DPS, Pyro applier, attack buffer, or healer. So what I'll mention here are teams, or characters rather, that he doesn't synergize well with. Either at C6 or C5 below, Bennett isn't the best with Hu Tao, since Hu Tao likes having her HP on the low side. Obviously, Bennett breaks that with his fast heals. Trying to get the buff from Bennett's burst may interrupt your Hu Tao combos. Next, only for C6, although we already talked about it, Bennett may break elemental reactions you want to go for, especially with Ayaka, Kaching, or other melee normal attackers aside from Pyro units. Of course, physical damage mains are also going to be messed up when you try to pair them with a C6 Bennett. So if you're using Bennett as a sole attack buffer with any character, I'd suggest that you try to maintain his C5 until, the game decides that you can switch it on or off. And if you're not fond of, using physical attackers, if you don't have Eula or Razor or Keqing as physical DPS, you can go and C6 Bennett, and there's gonna be no issue about it. And having this video up is, I feel like, should be monumental or memorable in some way. So that's why right now I'm going to C6 my Bennett. So this will be my very own historical moment for Bennett. Alright, let's do it. So that's all for this video. I hope I was able to help you guys out and give you some clarity about how you can make your Bennett shine or even more useful. But please, I am again not forcing anyone to build him the same way that I do. This is in part the same way how, other players have fun building their characters however they want. So I just feel so passionate about this. I mean, especially about this character, that it comes out as, something forced, but really it's not. So yeah, I tried to make this video as short as possible, so I hope I didn't miss anything out. But if I did, I will put it in the comment section. So how about you guys? Who's your first main character? Who carried you throughout the game? Comment yours for a chance to win one blessing of the Welkin Moon, and prize will be given via Code Shop next week. So thank you so much for watching. Please like, subscribe, share the video, share the channel, and recommend it to your friends. It would really help me out. So yeah, I appreciate all of you, and I'll see you on the next one.